Hello, Lizzie here, and today I'm going to show you how to make Fiona. Fiona is a downloadable pattern off my website lizzicurtis.com. She has a zip going all the way around, but she has very interesting pleating going on, which makes it quite an interesting make, but actually it's super easy as well. So if I unzip this, you'll be able to see that inside she's fully lined and really super easy. So this is what we're going to do. Let's put Fiona to one side. So I've got all my fabric prepared. Now don't forget, everything that you need to know is on the pattern. What you need to cut, the pattern pieces and how you put it together. All the pictures and all the instructions are there. The video is just another way of helping you to achieve making Fiona. So I've already cut my lining and cut my main fabric out. Pretty. I'll tell you about the fabric. I'll put it in the description of what I'm using. I've already stitched the darts on the lining, so that's what that looks like. Needs a good press. I've got a piece of zippage. Now this piece of zip, it's a zip on a roll. I use those all the time, and it's much longer than you need. If you think that this is going to be the zip going along here, it's a lot longer. Let me just offer it up so you can see. I need an inch thereabouts one end, but I want quite a length that end, and I'll talk about that as I go through. So I'm just going to open my zip up, and I'm just going to literally open it so it's like that. Okay, now just to make sure that your zip slider doesn't come off the end of your zip, you can use a regular zip for this, but just get one that's a little bit longer, and that way you'll see as I'm doing it, as I put my zip in, I'm going to top stitch as well, and it's not always easy when you're making a pouch. So I've used my stapler to actually put a staple, oops, at the end of the zip, and that stops my zip slider from coming off the end. If you want to put another one on there for safety, please do, but that's a really good way and a good tip to make sure that you don't lose your zip slider. I mean, they're fairly easy to put on, but it's just a bit of a nuisance, isn't it? So I'm now going to close my zip up because it's much easier to stitch, and I need this well, I need it to come off the end by about an inch or so, but I really want to avoid the slider, so I'm going to move it up a little bit. I don't really want to put a staple in there because I want this to keep open. So the first thing you need to do is, obviously we've done the darts on the main fabric, so we need to do the darts on the outer fabric, so I better do that first. So it's literally right sides together, so you've got 8 to do. Now I've already stabilised my fabric. I've used quite a firm interfacing. You could do a wadding if you want, but when we come to the pleating, you might find that that's a bit bulky. Always worth a try though. So just popping this together, it's about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm making a really nice point as I'm coming to the end of my dart. And I'm doing a little back stitch as well, just at the end of the dart. Oh, I just did it at the beginning. That's habit. You don't need to do it at the beginning, but you do need to do it at the point. Like I say, right sides together. And I nearly did the back stitch again. Habit of a lifetime. So we've done 4 on one side, so let's do the 4 on the other. So this is really quite an easy, quick make, but it's a little bit different to your normal pouch because we have that pleating, and it kind of makes it a nice boxy finish, and certainly great for putting your makeup in, or perhaps your jewellery, something like that. You'll find a reason to use it, especially if you use some of your favourite fabric. And of course you could use fat quarters and scraps to make this. The pattern piece is a half of a pattern piece, so you need to place it on the fold. But again, all the instructions and everything you need is in that download. So this is the last one now. So we've done 8 darts, 16 in total with the lining. So just get my thread out of the way. There we go. Back stitch. So let's just neaten those threads off. There's a lot of threads going on here, so we'll just neaten those, cut them all down. I shouldn't worry too much about the ones that you've snipped off at the ends, you know, where you've come to the points. I wouldn't worry because they're going to go inside the bag. So we'll just do the other side. And you'll notice it's a funny shape, and that's because we're going to do that pleating. So that's all done. There we go. Good, good, good. I'll pick up my threads later. So back to the zip. So this long straight edge here, so it's not the one that you've put the darts in, because that long straight edge is what you're going to attach to the zip. So you're doing right sides of your fabric to the right side of your zip. So where the slider is, that's what you're putting your fabric onto. And I'm just going to come down, I'll show you in the other angle in just a second. I'm just coming down to about a ½ an inch below my slider. So if I show you here, so my slider is well out of the way here, and I'm going to start stitching from there. But I'm going to stitch my lining at the same time. So get your lining right sides facing you and right sides to the back of the zip. And so you've got 3 layers. You've got your lining right side facing you, you've got your zip right side facing you, and you've got your main fabric right side down. Okay, so if you remember that little sandwich, that's the one you should always use for this. So we're just going to change now to our zipper foot. The zipper foot is a fabulous, fabulous tool to have, and it means that you can go right up to the edge near the teeth of the zip without any difficulties or any worries. They're also developed so it won't allow you to jump over the teeth of the zip. So if you're ever worried about that and breaking a needle, it shouldn't happen because they've been designed that way. So let's just get that slider out of the way. There we go. So you're putting those 3 layers underneath your machine. You could do a back stitch there if you want. I'm taking my clip out, so I'm just making sure that my zip lines up to the edge of my lining and to my fabric as well. So now we're stitching all 3 layers together. Use that needle down function to keep, it's like a third hand, it keeps everything in place. So again, just keep everything in place. And you know that the reason for the longer zip is because we want to do top stitching with this to make it really nice and neat. And you need the openness, if you like, of a long zip to be able for you to do that very effectively. So we're just coming up to the end now. And just come off the end. There we go. So now all I'm going to do is, this is the easy bit of top stitching because all of this will open up. So you have something that looks like that. So I'm just going to take that main fabric there and fold it down so I can see my zip and my lining is at the back. So that's what that looks like. Now ideally you'll press it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pull it away from the zip, and I just want to move my needle across to the other side, and I'm going to top stitch. You could probably get away with your regular foot now, but as we're going to put the zip in the other side, it's not worth changing that over. So I'm just pulling my fabric top and bottom away from the zip, from the teeth, and that way I know that it's going to lay straight. And like I say, obviously you can press all that to make it really neat. And so we're nearly there. Again, make sure that lining is well out of the way. There we go. Super. Right, so now I've top stitched one side, we need to now stitch the zip on the other side. So lay it flat down on your desk, bring the right side of your fabric over and make sure that it's sitting parallel So the seams are all parallel to what you've just stitched. So there's, if I lift that up, there's what we've just stitched. So I'm going to bring my right side over to the other side of the zip tape, and that's where we're going to stitch from there. So make sure it's all lined up beautifully. And then the lining, you're doing the same. You're bringing the right side of your lining up to the back of the zip. And again, we'll put a clip in just to hold. Just all those 3 layers. We don't want anything moving. Let's just get that better lined up. And the next stage when we do the top stitching is where, I need to move my needle across, is where we need that open zip to allow us to get in there to top stitch. It's quite difficult otherwise. But I'm keeping my zip closed for this part because I like to have that stability of that whole zip there to be able to stitch beautifully and neatly up to the zip teeth. So again, all those 3 layers, and you start to think that it looks a little peculiar. It looks a bit like a submarine. And you wonder how it's going to end up looking boxy, but it does. So keep all that lovely and neat, the 3 layers all together. We're just coming up to the end then, just getting the zip slider out of the way. If you want to, you could put a staple at the end where we've got that 1-inch hangover. Okay. So there is my pieces. That's what it will look like. But we need to top stitch that now. So I need to open up my zip, if I can find it, put my hand in there. Get hold of it. There's still plenty of room to do that. Just make sure you don't catch the lining as you're doing that, and just bring it through. Like I say, you might find it easier to open it before you do that second part. So now I've got the slider right up there, it's right out the way, and I can open that up. Do you see it opens up completely now? So I can turn this through. So like I said before, I want to top stitch. I'm just making sure I don't top stitch the same one that I just did. I'll just cut my threads just so they're a little neater. There we go. So you can see by having that zip open there, you've got a lovely sort of openness space to do that top stitching. It makes it super easy. So I'm moving my needle back over and just starting off that stitching, and I'm just making sure again, like I did before, I'm pulling that lining out of the way and my outer fabric, because it's kind of curved with all those darts. It doesn't really want to lay flat. So I'm doing my top stitching again. That really does give a nice finish. And it also means that when you unzip your bag, the lining won't get caught because you've top stitched it and kept it under control. So we're just coming up to the end now. So this is why you need the longer end here where you've got that staple, because you need that openness again to make sure you can top stitch. Just make sure the lining's okay. There we are, straight off the end. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is actually pleat it and stitch it, and we're done. Right, so I'm now going to give it a quick press. So I've given it a good press, so it's now ready for the next stage. So what we're going to do is that we're going to stay stitch all of these edges together, because we've got the outer fabric, we've got the lining fabric, and it's much easier when we go to pleat if all of those are one piece of fabric, if you like, by stay stitching. So I've changed my foot on my machine to my regular foot. Now this is not my 1/4 inch foot, this is my regular foot where I can zigzag, because the next part after the stay stitching will involve a little bit of a zigzag just to tidy the edges. There's an alternative way which I'll talk to you about when we get to that. So that's one side. So this is a little more awkward, but because we had that long tail of that zip, makes it easier. So again, you're just popping it under. So I'm just stay stitching this other edge now. So that's all the layers of the bag made into one. And if you want to trim this up a little bit, then feel free to do that. Okay, I'll just trim my threads. Right. So the next part is the pleating, and it really is quite easy. Obviously you need to think about it and look at this carefully to see what I do, and then it will make complete and utter sense. Let's hope. So start with one end, doesn't really matter which end, but you want that zip to end up together. Let's put it so the lining is going to be on the right side for me for stitching. So you want these two zips to actually meet up. Okay, now you could, if you wanted to, bring them together, line up your fabrics so they're all really neat. Let me just try and hold that so you can see it. So if I bring that like that, so that zip is now, the teeth are together. You could, if you wanted to, put a staple in there. Okay, so let's just do that. It's not imperative, but it helps. If I can get it to stay still, that's it. I'll put a couple in there. You just want to be careful that you don't go anywhere near where your machine's going to stitch. So now we've kind of joined that together temporarily, and now it's a case of pleating. So you want to do it, so the pattern, you'll see the pattern, it has a dip. So that dip is where you pleat. So going up to that first dart, if I do it here, perhaps we'll see it better. So going up to that first dart, that wants to come under. So where that dart is, go under, and then it comes out to the next dart there. And you can put a clip there. So let's do that. So on the other side, you're going to do exactly the same. So where that dart is, you're going to fold that under, and it comes almost right up to the zip teeth when you fold it under, and then you kind of bring up that other dart that you made, and those two darts are now sitting together like that. And then again you can clip. So let's just get those lined up. Okay, so that's what it'll look like. So all your layers are zigzagging behind there, and if I show you the back, you have a sort of a straight run, and that's your middle darts there, and that's your front darts there. And you've pleated it. So all you're going to do now is you're going to stitch along here, just along there. Now I would do a nice 1/2 inch. I want this to be strong, so a nice 1/2 inch seam going across there to join all those layers together. So I just remove one of the clips. Now your machine should be fine going through all those layers. So just where you go over the zip, just do a back stitch there, just to hold that really well and nice and strong. Again, a back stitch either end. So that's our seam going all the way across. So now I'm going to just chop this down. Now at this point I'm just going to zigzag my seam, and that's how I'm going to neaten it. But you could, if you wanted to, get some bias binding or some binding and bind this raw edge here. So I'm just going to pop this onto a zigzag, and don't forget you can back stitch and a locking stitch with a zigzag as well. So I'm just going straight over all my layers and my zip, just coming up to the end, zigzag again. Let's cut my threads. There we go. There's one still to go. There we go. So when we look at it now, and I'll show you here, you'll be able to see that I've stitched right across. There's my outside darts there, and I've done a zigzag to neaten. And like I say, you could put some tape on there because you're going to see that. Well, you won't really see it inside the bag, but that's what's inside the bag. So if we look at the other end now, we're going to do exactly the same, but this time I'm going to bring my zip slider into my bag, because don't forget we're going to cut across there. You don't want your slider on this bit, you need to move it into the inside of the bag, but don't close it, otherwise you won't be able to turn the bag through. Well, not easily anyway. So let me just cut that down just a wee bit. So we're going to do the same again. So if you remember at the other end, there we go. So those are our front two darts here. They get tucked under, and then the front dart comes to the side. So there's your front and there's your back there. Hopefully you can see those. And we can just put a clip there. So once you've done this a couple of times, it's really easy. So you'll just wear that in the pattern. It goes like that, and that V gets put into the middle. That's the pleat that goes into the middle of the bag. So again, we'll just pop a clip in there. And now we're good to go across this part. And don't forget, I'm doing a good 1/2 inch seam allowance. So back to a straight stitch. It's only because there's lots of layers. It's the strongest part of it needs to be the strongest part of the bag because it's where the zip is. So just make sure your slider is well out of the way, that you haven't got any staples, if you've done that technique, anywhere near your machine. It would be a shame to break a needle at this stage because you've done so well. Nice back stitch to hold. Oh, and don't forget, and I didn't do it, I'm going back. Do a back stitch across that zip, just for strength. So now I'm just going to go straight across, and it's about 1/4 inch that I've got left for my stitching, so let me just show you that. So you'll see a bit of stay stitching that I did there before, but there's my 1/4 inch seam allowance there. But there still is a rogue thread, there's always a rogue thread. There we go. So now I'm just going to run that under the machine again and just do a nice neat zigzag finish. And like I said, don't forget a zigzag you can back stitch, so it makes it that little bit neater and stronger as well. Obviously it gives it a nice finish. So let's pop that out the way, trim all our threads again. It seems that's what I always do, trim the threads. And because of all that pleating, the darts, all of that, you'll now end up with the most amazing bag. Just pop your finger into those corners that you've just pleated and push those out. And pop those out. There we go. So what you end up with is this amazing shape. And it kind of squares up over time. All those pleats stay in place and you end up with this fabulous shape. There we go. Just tell it who's boss. Get those pleats in. And when we look at the one we made earlier, which I've poked out and made sure they're all laying flat, you can see how those pleats look when it's done. Makes the most amazing bag. So there we are. That's Fiona. So I hope you enjoy making loads of them.